Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Um, would you pull the door, whoever's at the back coming in? Um, Welcome to the first LAMP session at IETF 123. Next slide. Remind you that we are operating under the IETF note well. Please make sure that you are aware of your uh, responsibilities, your rights, your privileges, and most importantly, the IPR stuff, and really treat each other well. It's important that we treat each other with respect as we are going through the various discussion topics today. And I know from the mail list that some people are pretty passionate about the topics on the list today. So let's make sure that we uh, go through those with deep respect for each other. Next slide. So we have a very long agenda. Um, we have a minute taker. Thank you, Flo. Um, would if someone would just watch the um, chat room, and if something that needs to be brought to the whole room, just bring it to the mic. Um, Are there any agenda bashes? Well, obviously there's 7 slides of agenda, so um, we, I have, the only one I've received so far is that the composite folks would like to move their discussion to Wednesday. Is there any objections to that? All right, then we'll see if we can get through the rest of the agenda today. We will try. Yes.
I want to Falco MTG, Falco Strensky MTG. I have one suggestion to go through the PKIX 11 version 3.2 draft, which is for public review just now. I could prepare slides if there's time in the next session at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We will, all right. So there are 2 documents that have made it to RFC since we met last, and I think there's actually another one, which you'll see on the next slide. Next slide. So we have a bunch with the RFC editor, and at least 2 of them were in Auth 48, and we knew their numbers, and I think one more now is the last one. So, yeah. Oh, that's right, 2 of them. No, that's right. Thank you very much. I think we now have the numbers for D, E, and G. So um, this is showing that the amount of work we've been doing is now coming out the other end, and that this is encouraging. We will have. I would expect that all of these will be RFCs by the next time we meet together. Next slide. So these are with the ISG. This is a good number 2, and I think one of them just got pushed to the RFC editor as well. But I'm hoping we can go through this list extremely quickly in terms of, is there any issue that the author knows about that they need to bring back to the group? So anything with RFC 7030 CSR attributes, any issues that need to come to the group? Yeah, I know, but as long as there are no issues. How about dilithium certs? Okay. Kyber certs. Good. Um, X509 SLH DSA. Okay. Any of the CMC BIS documents. All right, we're good there. Private key statement attributes is That one's mine, and then there's nothing to bring here. CMS MLDSA, all good. All right. X509 Algnun, good. And CMS Kyber. All right, good deal. Next slide, please. Okay. So these are the active documents that are on that are kind of PKIX related. The next slide are the active documents that are SMIME related. And then the following slide are topics that we have not yet adopted, but people want to make presentations about. So the idea is that we'll focus on the active documents and then move to the ones that are not yet adopted, uh, except for the moving of composites, which is 5C to, um, wait a minute, what happened to composite? Uh, oh, I see. Okay. Okay. All right. So, CSR attestation. Mike, are you ready for that? You're remote, right? Mike, are you ready? All right. He's online. I know he's remote. Yep. Yeah. Okay. You're going to do it instead. All right. If you pull up his slides.
So if he wakes up, then we switch.
Okay.
That's the reason we have multiple co-authors on a document. Yeah, so Mike put the slides together. Thanks to Mike. Largely based on the feedback we received during working group last call. Mike St. John's did a detailed feedback. You saw the discussions following afterwards on the list. And that's why the Notewell and the other things were highlighted. So the first feedback is we added the passport model later to the document. Initially, it was just a background check model. These two models are described in a RATS architecture, just show different communication patterns. And this slide is a reminder about how the passport model works. It's the device which is being attested, and specifically the component that does the attestation there, which produces the evidence, is the attester. You see it in the picture on the left-hand side. And it produced it basically is configured with some information, typically a URL to reach out to a verifier that is somewhere on the net, and then presents the evidence and gets the attestation result back. This figure sort of simplifies it because the attestation result first go to the attester, but then end up at the relying party. So this is a simplification of that model. But the point is, with the CSR, is that instead of passing the evidence in there, we then extended it to pass in the attestation result. Since the CSR is mostly a means to carry that information, it's kind of opaque in some sense, but we still had to describe the overall model and how the payload is included. And there, Mike noticed, or I'm sure you would all have noticed, that the format, the AS1 format, doesn't quite match the evidence encapsulation and the attestation result encapsulation. And if we go forward one slide, I think that shows the AS1. Yeah, so here you see the difference. The attestation result payload doesn't carry an optional cert chain, which the structure for carrying the evidence does. And the reason for that was that, unlike the evidence formats for which there many exist, so in case someone of you was at the bad BOF. Yesterday, you've heard about all sorts of different vendors producing technology in this area. So they produce, AMD has a different format for encoding their evidence, and ARM has a different one, and Intel has yet another one, and so on and so on. But with the attestation results, the story is better, much, much better. And so one of the format that is being standardized, and it's a very popular one in the RATS working group, that has already the cert chain included in the attestation result structure itself. Oh, Mike is here. Oh, cool. So the long story short, it doesn't hurt to include the certs as an optional field in case someone is carrying an attestation result which doesn't yet already have the cert chain included in the structure itself. Mike, should I hand over to you because you prepared the slides? Good to see you.
I am very sorry. It is 2:30 in the morning here. How much of this did I miss?
So in any case, to complete that, number one feedback, we are going to add this optional certs field, which carries a certificate chain, and the two structures then match. And if you already have the certificate chain in the attestation result format, all is good. You just leave that field out. If not, then you populate that field. Easy. Mike, hand over to you.
Uh-oh. Sorry, I literally woke up 5 minutes ago. Why don't you do the next slide while my brain kicks in?
Okay. Okay. We included in the appendix. We included examples for how the CSR would look like with different evidence formats, and some people provided some extra data. And in addition to what we already had, we have a very detailed and good DBM-based example. We have one example based on the entity attestation token. We have another one based on confidential computing. So that's all good. For the attestation result, we didn't have such an example, and it didn't cross our mind to add one. But no problem, we can add one because we have that data already from the RATS work. We can do that, Mike. But
do we have one? Because what I say on this slide is like ARs aren't as common in the wild, and so I'm not sure it's quite as trivial to add an AR. Like we can't just easily make a TPM example. For example, TPMs don't produce ARs.
No, the AR would be a different format. So we have that. Thomas Fossati can give us one that is used by some of the vendors. So it's no problem.
Great.
I can stuff it in. So that's easy to. Oh, sorry.
Mike St. John's. This isn't actually what I was trying to get at. What I was trying to get at was that you're coming between the verifier and the CA or RA, and it ought to be more of a standard result. There really shouldn't be a different one of these for every single different type of attestation. You're looking for you're looking for maybe a class of attestation results that are not tied to the original stuff.
Okay, but that's wildly out of scope of this. This is just how do you carry it in a CSR. If you want a standard AR format, that's a different document. What
I'm saying is that that's a whole nother set of things. You would be better off just pulling this out.
No, I disagree. There is a document in the RATS group. Why not? Why would I pull this out?
The question I've been asking is, can I implement something useful from this document?
Yes.
There is not enough information in this document with respect to attestation results, even after adding your examples, to make it a useful document for doing that type of thing. Because each CA has to implement. What does a CA implement?
But that's
easy. And if the document doesn't provide that detail, we'll fix that. But I don't see that problem. Like you get the attestation result from the verifier and you pass it on. And you need to process the attestation result. There's a spec for that in RATS.
Okay. The way you guys argued about this was that the verifier was the only thing that needed to understand the attestation, the evidence statements. But the attestation results have to be interpreted by the CA or RA. Okay, so you need some sort of description that says this is what's going on here, not just sort of leaving it up to the end.
We can add a reference to that.
But you can make the same argument about public keys. 5280 doesn't define what a public key is. That's passed on to the crypto library. Like, this is just a container. It's just a way to pass data.
And specifically for you, you didn't want to have a verifier in the first place. You wanted to implement all of this in the CA-RA.
And I probably will, but I still, if I am a CA and I get an attestation result, and I now, okay, so you basically made the argument that, oh, well, the CA doesn't have to implement any of the attestation stuff because the verifier is going to do it. But now you're saying, well, the CA has to implement something coming back from the verifier, and we haven't told you what it's going to be because it's now just a container for something we're going to define in the future. That seems to be basically continuing to push your problem off, and we're now back into the CA and RA having to do something. So
if I haven't added the reference, I will do that. Okay. Next slide. Who should do that slide?
Yeah. Next MSJ feedback. This one I fully agree with. So we're adding this registry. Why don't you stay here, Hannes? You're useful. Good human.
Nobody ever said that to me.
Right. So one of the things this draft does is it creates a new IANA registry. And this is a little bit unconventional, right? We're creating an IANA registry to track things that have been registered elsewhere, like change controllers. So most of this table at the moment, the initial contents, is tracking OIDs that have already been registered by the TCG. Why? Because implementers may say, well, okay, what are the values I'm likely to encounter in the wild while I'm parsing CSRs? So we're providing a list of things you might run into in the wild. Mike pointed out that this is for populating these evidence statement structures, which is an OID and an ASN1 type. But we're only providing half the data in this table. So he's suggesting we should provide both the OID and the name of the ASN1 structure that OID belongs to. Fair enough. Good point. I think that's a very good suggestion. We will do that. I will do that. Next. All right. Here's the fun one. So the hint. And this is the one that erupted on list. This is the one where Deb put both mics, myself and MSJ, in timeout. Guilty. This definitely got a little out of control. Deb, you were correct. Thank you for that timeout. So this hint has come up before. We're talking about the evidence statement, and we're talking about this third value, which is an optional IA5 string. Whoops, I meant to update this slide. There's a mistake on this slide. It actually is not a full URI. The scheme should not be present. The EndShield : shouldn't be there. It's Michael Richardson looked at this slide and corrected it yesterday. It is actually defined to be only the authority part of a URI. So actually I made a mistake here. The point, however, is Mike St. John's been pointing out that this is defined vaguely, and he thinks it should either be locked down tighter or removed. And we disagree. We think that defining it vaguely is in fact the point. The authors added this specifically to work around a case where the container format is a container. Like you're putting in a CMW or a WebAuthn, which is itself not a data format. It is simply a container for another data format. And therefore the CA/RA doesn't uniquely know what's in this. If your OID just says data is CMW, then you actually don't know anything about what the final content is. You don't know which verifier, which vendor's tool you should use to call this thing. So the hint allows to dereference through an abstraction layer. We think there's a valid use case. We think there's a necessary problem that this is required to be there to solve. Next, please.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike St. John's again. Again, this is not what I said what I said was the hint is at the top level of this, which means it's going to be in every single different evidence statement. Okay, because of that, it is normative. It needs to be normative as opposed to this other discussion we're talking about, which means you need enough that you can't define it vaguely on purpose and expect somebody coming along, looking at this document and trying to implement something and trying to understand the architecture and not having enough to understand what to put in this field as an implementer, or actually to figure out how to deal with the thing on the registration piece. So with respect to your particular problem, the container-based stuff, what I suggested originally, and you ignored the suggestion, was that you put the hint down in the evidence statement with the container structure, and you looked at it that way.
But that
The
makes,
OID would tell
I don't
you
understand what? How?
Okay, you gave me an example of the CMW, okay, structure, or CW, whatever it is.
Sure.
And it is a choice of two things. Okay, if you built a structure, typed it with the OID, and you put the hint down with that container, because the container needed the additional
So
hint.
what do you mean with the container? You want us to go to you want us to go to W3C and suggest that WebAuthn add a field inside WebAuthn?
No, I'm suggesting that when you're putting the WebAuthn token there, you basically put the hint at the same level of the token in a structure inside the evidence statement. You basically
That's what this is.
No, this
That's
is
literally
not,
what this is.
This is at the top level of the evidence statement, not in the thing referred to as the evidence statement type. And that's
So
what I'm
I take the WebAuthn, I
saying.
serialize it to binary, it goes in the STMT field.
No,
Right next to it is the hint.
No, you serialize it to binary. You put it in an octet string in a structure that includes the hint. So it's
That's
sequence
literally what's on the
hint.
screen, Mike. That's
No, it's
literally
not.
what's on the screen.
The type field is the type of the type field is identified by the OID. Okay, the type field would be
No, the type field is an OID. The type field is an OID.
The statement type is identified by the OID, correct?
Yes.
The ASN1 statement type is identified the OID. If that statement type were a sequence of hint plus whatever your container thing was, that would be fine with me. You would move this hint down. It would no longer be normative for this document. It would be specific to your container-based stuff, and I wouldn't have to have anything in this document about hints. You could have it as informative information that nobody has to implement unless they're implementing your specific containers. And
that's
then
what the word optional means. If you don't need it, just leave it out.
I think I would be like inclined to say this should be a URL, because if you to make the type more strict, and for the following reasons, if you recall what I said at the introduction about the passport model, there the attester also needs to be configured with a URL, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to find out what the verifier is to which it has to talk to. And so having a URL here, which would be tighter, more restrictive than the current format, would solve that problem, or at least in my opinion.
Again, you have a particular set of things that sort of make sense for what you're doing. The container-based thing, you didn't have hints at the beginning, and you came along and you went, oh, we've got this container thing, and we don't want to open it up and actually require the verifier. We need to know what different verifiers there are, and I still don't understand why you have multiple verifiers for the same OID, but okay.
I respond to that.
I can respond to that too.
Yeah. So TPM-based attestation. There's one format. It's TPM. It's in the appendix of the document as an example. But then
my example is going to be WebAuthn. WebAuthn,
Yeah.
I might need the Android parser. I might need the Apple parser. I might need the I might need the Yubico parser.
Yeah, and in the TPM example, like it could be a TPM that is used by Siemens. It could be one that is used by Infineon. It could be, who knows how many companies are using DPMs. And they initially, Monty can confirm, like they initially go through this process where they provision the information there. They transition from the EK to the AK. And then that's what you're using. You're signing with the AK for a specific vendor. And so it's the same format, but it's a different party.
It's the same format. It may be a different set of certificates, but it's the same format.
That's the point.
It's not.
That's exactly the point. You need to send it to the right party, because otherwise they can't. The format alone doesn't make it enough. But I don't want to register at DPM for Infineon, DPM for Siemens, DPM for who knows what.
Why not?
I don't want. No, I don't want to do that.
That's the way we do this here in
No,
PKIX.
it's not.
Okay. I think I again, the way this is being done is again problematic on a lot of levels, but with respect to this hint thing, it is right now normative, and it doesn't have enough data. It doesn't have enough information to be a useful guide on how to actually implement it.
I think I'm not sure you really are interested in implementing any of this. Like, if you don't want, you don't have to.
If I've got this,
it's optional.
If I've got this thing stuck at the top, I have to know if I get this document and it has hint optional, I'm going, do I populate it or don't? What are the conditions?
We have plenty of text in there that says, like if you have only one verifier in your model, you don't populate it because there's no decision that needs to be made. You can send it only to one party. Even if you populate it on the attester, if you even have an attester, if you have an attester, it won't matter. You send it there. It's only one party you can send it to.
Okay.
Do you have even the example where you have multiple attester?
Okay.
Like if you go to the RATS meeting later this week, you will see that there are some people worry about the configuration where they have many different attesters, and they need to make up their mind, like, where do they send it to, the information to? You may not have that problem. This field is irrelevant. That's why it's optional. You can populate it, you cannot populate, it makes no difference.
Okay, so that sounds like non-normative, informative text.
It's optional. You know what optional means?
I do, but again, you need guidance on how to populate this field. If you're an implementer, there is no, if somebody else can read this and go, yeah, I know how to make this work, that's fine. This got added about a year and a half ago, and I've been pointing out the fact that it is vague, and vague on purpose is lazy.
And we have sort of changed the text numerous times in response to that discussion. So I'm lost. Like, I'm really asking the working group to say, like, look at this.
Yeah.
Do you fail to
I'm
see
gonna sit down now.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked on the list whether there was a need for hints of various structures, or this is the only one. And so I'm going to ask that now. Again, no one on the mail list answered one way or the other. Okay. What I'm trying to find out is Mike in the rough. So please respond to this poll. Do you have a need for a hint that cannot be represented in the URI without a scheme?
Ooh, 3 yeses. I would like to know what those are. Knowing you have to come to the microphone, the yeses all turn to no's.
I'm not sure how to interpret that. At least what I seeking chair help here.
Well,
What do you want me to do? Or us?
can those two yeses come to the microphone? What is the data you need to carry? We can modify this, but we need to know what.
So besides Mike, there's one person in the room who has a need, and I would like to understand it. Because I think Mike has explained his on mail list.
Yeah, and you keep calling it a hint, and it's an ancillary data field. It just turns out that they're used for it as a hint. I'd like to be able to use that same field for something else.
If you let us go to the next slide, we'll work through your ancillary data objection separately.
Okay.
But it's very clear that most people don't care.
Yeah.
Who's that second
Only thing
person?
I get out of this, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing rats in lamps. I'm not surprised.
Is the other person who has a need willing to come to the mic and tell us what it is? Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, here's your ancillary data or auxiliary data. And I'm paraphrasing Mike here. I'm probably doing it wrong, but my understanding of this argument is I don't need a hint. You had said I need to cover 7 types of TPM attestations which have a single core attestation data structure, but different types of auxiliary data. You said I don't need a hint, I need an aux data. And my understanding of your example here is, for example, you have a piece of data which comes in 3 parts: a blob, a detached signature, and a cert chain. So my understanding is you want to turn a hint.
Actually there. That's one example, but yeah.
Okay, I pulled this directly. I think I literally copy and pasted this from your email.
Yeah. No, this is correct.
Okay.
And again, this still lets you do your hint. I'm just
Sure.
Right.
Hint could be a type of aux data. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So my counter is, if you've got a thing that comes in multiple pieces, why don't you define yourself an ASN1 object to serialize that? Why don't you define yourself a MSJ, a test payload type?
And I asked the same question of why couldn't you do the serialization for your container-based stuff?
Well, because this document doesn't own WebAuthn and doesn't own CMW. Asking a CSR document to go around the world and find every possible container format that exists and define a wrapper layer for it seems crazy. Whereas if you are writing a proprietary thing, you know what your data is. That seems far more reasonable to expect you to wrap your own data.
How many container data types are you talking about? Basically, you guys would like, if this field were nothing more than an octet string that you could stuff other things into. And I remember that from the beginning of this thing. My uses
part of the problem is I don't know what exists in the world. This is just a container. Put data there. It shouldn't be our responsibility to have to categorize every single thing that could possibly exist in the world.
If there's a need for a hint, you build a structure that has a hint in it. If you don't need a hint, this is unfortunately a wasted field that other people could use for things. This is backwards compatible for what you've got. And it doesn't break your stuff. And why you have been resisting it, I do not understand.
Because you're making things complicated for a totally unknown use case.
You mean verifier?
No, I don't know what data.
No.
I don't understand what system you have.
Okay. I've been building attestation systems related to smart cards, global platform, TPMs, and proprietary stuff for 15 years.
That's fine. I respect your experience. That's not relevant here. The point is you're asking us to carry this arbitrary sequence, which is making this format harder to parse. You're still going to need to define an OID. If we have an aux data that allows you to carry arbitrary amounts of different chunks of data, you're still going to need to define an OID. You're still going to need to define the rules for parsing this now broken up into multiple pieces thing. I don't understand how that's saving anyone any work compared to just define a structure
OID,
for it.
Okay, so let's go back to your hint thing for once. Right now, you've got hint optional. Okay, for a given OID, somebody parsing the ASN1 has no idea whether or not the OID will be whether or not the hint will be there or not.
Sure,
The
and it's
descrip-
perfectly
Okay,
valid
okay.
for them to just ignore if the hint is there, they just ignore it. That's perfectly valid
Okay,
way to
you're,
implement this.
let me finish. Okay. From an implementation and compliance point of view, it would be nice to know by the receiver whether or not the sender intended that to be there. Okay. When you define the OID, you say you would, hint is present. Okay. So you're using type identifier because type
But
identifier
that
is simple.
doesn't match the use case.
If you're saying CMW hint, hint is required or hint should be present.
Not saying that.
Okay, I don't understand then. Well, anyway, I obviously don't understand. This is a simple change that I've suggested.
I
It
don't
lets
think
you
it's
do what
simple.
you want to do. It is not more complex for your things because the OID tells you what the structure is. Okay, since you don't really care about the hint field either way, apparently, because you just told me I don't really want to know whether it needs to be present or not, then
Well, I can't know whether it needs to be present or not.
if you do the right thing in ASN1, you can define the structure so it tells the implementers whether or not it needs to be present or not.
So,
But
so
how
for
are the
your-
implementers supposed to know if it needs to be present or not? It's going to be the device that produces data that will know whether its manufacturer defined a hint for it or not. It's not related to the type of data. It's related to the type of device producing the data.
So how did you implement the DPM-based remote attestation?
If you recall the ASN1 discussion, what Mike is saying is at the time you define the OID, the way you populate the class tells you whether that field is needed or optional. So mandatory or optional. And so just seeing the OID, you'll know whether that field is there. Or
And would it also include the value at that time already as well?
no.
No, but that's not how optional works.
I'm going to walk away.
Yeah, so being Monty Wiseman, being one of the authors, independent consultant. Yeah, so the idea is that, being the one that wrote the TPM one, if you'll notice, don't go back to it, but you notice there is one for an OID for TPM to certify, and that tells the verifier what the payload is, how to verify. There is more than one way to verify the attributes of a key. Right? For example, I could do a read public info in a audit session, for example, and that would be another. So that would tell the verifier how to interpret it. My understanding, at least my use case for this field, and it can be accomplished actually either way. I like the way we've done it, is to tell the verifier what to look for, what sort of policies to look for in this. Is the key exportable or not, for example? Right. So that would be a case. So that's why I don't want to specify don't want to be required to specify in the OID whether or not that hint and what the format of the hint is, because that's going to be domain specific for whatever sort of policies. So I might send this to a policy for HR, for example, or I might send it to a policy for the finance. It would be two different policies. The client would know, right? And that's where it would fill this in. But I would oppose the OID making it a requirement for the particular type of field it is, because that would put the burden on TCG, for example, where I'm the registrar for that, to define how that's going to be. And I think that's very implementation specific.
Isn't it sort of a maxim that choice is sort of an enemy of security? And I'm getting to the point where the number of possible choices to do this stuff, and try and actually do that won't end up with a secure system when one way or shape or form. There's just, I don't know how to make this. I don't know how to make this thing work.
Ignore the hint. Just ignore the hint and you're done.
If I've got a verifier if I've got a verifier that has 3 plugins for the same OID, and each one of them gives me a different answer for a given attestation, what do I do with that?
But Mike, it's
That's
easy
how
to
it
say, like,
works.
to make these generic statements that sort of options introduce complexity, which of course there is. But you also previously said, like, you have worked on attestation, remote attestation for smart cards, for DPMs, and there are many other technologies. Like, we sometimes have to face reality that different technologies have come up with different ways. It's not that we can suddenly say, oh, smart card industry, now you switch to something else, DPMs do something else. Like, we have to somehow sort of navigate this ecosystem. And so would be wishful thinking if there would be only one format and one party we need to talk to, but it's just not reality. Like,
I think WebAuthn is a good example here. So if the data payload type is WebAuthn, if it's an Android type WebAuthn, that's going to be an X509 cert where the data is in their weird sort of custom v3 extensions. If it's a YubiKey type WebAuthn, then it's some proprietary binary payload, I believe. Like, if I take a WebAuthn payload from an Android device and I hand it to the Yubico parser, it's going to blow up.
So
Like,
why doesn't
yeah, that's complexity, but that's not, we can't solve that. That's how WebAuthn works.
Why aren't you using a different OID, same payload, different OID to indicate that it is a WebAuthn payload with YubiKey, and YubiKey, when they register their attestation, they get their own OID. I don't understand why you're not doing it that way.
Okay, well, that's a criticism for the W3C, not for us, because the WebAuthn OID has been registered, I believe.
The WebAuthn OID may have been registered, and yeah, that's the type of the field, but the evidence statement type is different. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. You're conflating two different things here. I understand where you're going there. You have basically said there is a defined OID that says something, but it doesn't say something in terms of the domain of an evidence statement, and that's what you need to stop trying to put together.
Right, so we could require to have that the OID is unique, and if you're dealing with a data type where the OID is not unique, then register a new OID. That is a valid way to solve that problem. Is that going to get us out of all the sticky situations? I don't know.
Chairs, please help out, because it feels like the authors are talking to Mike and back, and the rest of the group is watching some videos.
Yeah, this is not a good use of our working group time for sure.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. We'll try and sum it up at the end.
Ta-da, we're done.
Sorry, it's going to need to go back through working last call, even just for the attestation results stuff, because it's not done yet. Okay.
Yeah, we are making changes. That's true.
Yeah, I know, but there's changes to this document. The other piece of it that I mentioned is what are the matching rules for the hint. So our uppercase, is it uppercase match, lowercase match, camel case match? No, it's a matching rule. It's based. It's an authority, so it has a rule defined.
Okay, I don't have great advice here because it's very clear that there are two different approaches to solving this, and that the vast bulk of the room doesn't care which one is picked. That's you. I remember many years ago when IPsec was faced with the same problem. A very wise man said, "We're standing between two bales of hay. We're a donkey standing between two bales of hay, starving. Donkeys aren't that dumb." Okay. So we do need to come up with a mechanism to pick a way forward. And I just don't, I mean, I can flip a coin, but I don't think that would satisfy anyone. We need to continue to understand what the nugget of the problem is. And I'm wondering, because Mike, the look on your face when you said, can we work through the web auth and example using the W3C assigned OID? I'd like to see some work on that to see if it actually bears fruit in terms of a way forward. Does that make sense?
And actually, I've got the OID table up on my other screen. I'm actually not sure there is a WebAuthn defined. We don't have it in the table, at least.
Probably have no time to do that. You'd like.
Anyway, yeah, sure. Understood.
All right. What's next on the agenda? Attestation freshness is next.
Yeah, so only very briefly, the attestation freshness. Joe just day before yesterday added a big missing piece. Maybe Joe, come to the microphone and say what you did. Because the freshness document depends on the previously discussed CSR attestation document, and so obviously we want to make progress on one first because needless to say the details matter here. But there was this outstanding issue on the functionality. We had CMP and ESD covered.
And then I added support for CMC. So basically what I did was come up with a generic way to request the nonce from the server. Sorry, that was really distracting.
Yeah, so with that, sort of like with these mechanism covered, with the text for these three different protocols, I think that's pretty much like pending the resolution of the earlier discussed issue. I think we can move forward on that document fairly quickly, but yeah, that's what has been holding us up. Yeah. So that's in some sense simple. And we are going to merge the PR, and then, so you have a fresh document version to look at, and that should give you hopefully some reviewers to see what we did. But it would be, I think I would wait till we resolve the other issues so we can sync up the content so this is unified. So I would drop a mail to the list asking for reviewers once we got the other document under control, and then update it with the new content.
Okay, thank you. What's next?
Key usage serial validation, Corey.
He's got slides.
All right. How's it sound? Good? Okay. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So I'm going to give a little bit of a recap of the CRL key usage validation draft that we have. Probably this is not widely used, so probably a little bit of revisiting with the background. So I'm going to talk about what indirect CRLs are. This is the same content from 121. Certification authorities can delegate the signing of CRLs to other entities. You can think of this as roughly akin to an OCSP delegated responder, but instead of issuing OCSP responses, you're instead emitting CRLs. Those entities, the CRL issuers, are issued an entity certificate, but with the CRL sign key usage bit inserted in the key usage extension. Indirect CRLs cover certificates that are not signed by the CRL issuer themselves. So it's an entirely different entity from the actual issuing CA. And support for processing indirect CRLs is not mandatory it's not required by 5280 to have a compliant implementation, but several libraries do support it, and there is a recommendation that it is supported. Next slide, please. All right, so a little bit of language from 5280. This is the certificate profile. It says that conforming CAs must include this extension, being the key uses extension, and certificates that contain public keys that are used to validate digital signatures on other public key certificates or CRLs. So what this is saying is if you are issuing a certificate to a CRL issuer, you contain the key uses extension and assert the CRL sign bit. Notably, within this language, there is no requirement for non-CRL issuer entity certificates to contain this key usage extension. So, for example, if you have a document signing certificate or a code signing certificate, there's no need to there's no profile requirement to include the key usage extension. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to jump a bit ahead to section 633. This is giving the processing algorithm for CRLs when a relying party is checking the revocation status via CRL. It says that you go and obtain the certification path for the issuer of the complete CRL. There's a little bit of additional language that was added in 5280 that the trust anchors must be the same. Basically, the same trust anchor must be used for both the CRL issuer certificate and the certificate under test. And the language there I have in bold saying that if the key usage extension is present in the CRL issuer certificate, verify that the CRL sign bit is set. Notably, within this language, there's no explicit requirement for validating the inclusion of the key usage extension itself. So what that means is if the certificate was, the code signing certificate, for example, that does not have a key usage extension at all, it could be potentially used for CRL validation. Next slide, please. So within the draft, there's quite a bit of write-up on a concrete scenario where an arbitrary entity certificate could be trusted for CRL validation. I encourage you to go ahead and read that. But we have the proposed fix here. This incorporates some language that's based on some discussion that we had with Michael St. John's on the list. That we're saying if the version of the CRL's issuer certificate is version 3, then verify that the key usage extension is present and verify that the CRL signed is bit. The bit is set. This is a little bit different than the previous version of the draft we had. The previous version of the draft didn't have the scoping of the requirement, just the version 3. But as Michael St. John's pointed out on the list, version 1 trust anchors are still a thing. So we want to accommodate that legacy use. Just a bit of background on that. Version 1 and version 2 X509 certificates don't have an extensions field. So there's no way to include the key usage bit. Next slide, please. All right, so this document's currently in working group last call. I think we've heard from two folks on the list. Michael St. John's, he provided some very useful feedback that we incorporated in this latest version. We also had some comments and from Carl Wallace. So we'd like to encourage additional reviews, comments, see how we can better improve the document, and then hopefully a successful conclusion of the working group last call. So that's pretty much all I have for the presentation.
Does anyone have any feedback on this document that has not already been brought to the list? Okay. Mike, does the proposed change satisfy your comment? Thank you. Got a thumbs up. So next week or so, we'll wrap up the last call.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I think I'm next. So.
Yep.
All right. So the next draft that I'll be presenting here with co-author Joe is the related certificate descriptor, or also known as certificate discovery. We originally presented this work well, I guess we actually presented it before Bangkok, but we presented it again in Bangkok, and there was a call for adoption, and it was successfully adopted by the group. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to kind of give a background on summary of basically the properties of this this access method. So what the idea is that you have in the if you know like how there's OCSP pointers in a certificate, for example, those are in the authority info access extension. There's an access method for OCSP. This mechanism is very similar to that. Instead of using the authority info access extension, it uses the subject info access extension. This is already defined in 5280, should be standardized. It's just defining a new access method that allows for a certificate to point to another certificate, and also provides some additional semantic information that can be used to describe the relationship between the certificates. It allows for cross-linking entity certificates, also potentially CA certificates. There's no restriction on a CA certificate not having a subject info access extension, so it can be used there. It can contain a URL so that the related certificate is easy to fetch, especially in the case where a client has never seen the related certificate before. The backwards compatibility and hybrid security are not automatic, which means the client would have to have some knowledge to know how to process this access method. But clever verifiers could use this descriptor, this access method, to achieve them. Next slide, please. Just kind of giving an overview of some of the related work in this area. One is the other certificates RFC, that's 5697. What this does is it allows for, this is an X509 extension that allows for pointers by hash to another certificate. You basically give the issuer and serial number as well as the certificate hash in an extension to point to another. Notably, this does not have a URL to actually go and fetch the related certificate. So the client would a priori have to be configured to know how to use the information in this extension to go and fetch the related certificate. Given that the cert hash is a required field, it's not possible to simultaneously issue certificates that reference each other. You know, it's always going to be the certificate that's issued first can be referenced, but not vice versa, just because you don't know the hash of the certificate until it's after it's issued. Next slide, please. And then recently published RFC. This went through, I think it was actually on the slide at the beginning of the session. The binding for multi-auth draft is now an RFC. It's similar to the other certificates draft in that it has the hash value of the related certificate, but again, it does not have a URL for the client to actually realize that retrieval. It would have to be pre-configured by local policy. And also, again, it's going to have that dependency where one certificate will always only point to the other, just given that, again, you don't know the hash until issuance. And next slide, please. All right.
So this is a summary of what we've done since Bangkok. So we've added support for the certificate references, and then we've come up with these discovery purpose IDs. Next slide. So there are two types of certificate references. So the first one being direct, which just has the certificate right in there. And then the indirect is a URI where the client can go get the certificate. Next slide. For discovery purpose IDs, basically it describes what the purpose of this method is. So we've come up with these 5 right here. So the self one is a URI back to the certificate that you already have, so you can do a comparison to make sure you have the correct one. Next slide. So for next steps, we're looking for feedback on the purpose IDs that we put in there. Are these, good, bad? Do you want different ones? And then same for the use cases, like are the use cases clear? Do they make sense? And then, yeah, just any other comments that you have for the draft. I think that's it.
Comments or questions? Are you going to your chair or the mic? Okay. All right, thank you. Please read it and bring comments to the list.
I think you have somebody. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the next step.
I'm assuming I'm okay to speak. Is discovery ever necessary to correctly process the certificate, or is it always an optional thing that one might do but is perfectly good to skip?
It's a supplement to normal certification path validation. We kind of see this as useful if you say, for example, if you have an MLDSA signing certificate, but you want someone's encryption certificate, so the MLDSA cert can point to the MLChem cert. If you don't need that information, you're entirely free to ignore it. Subject information access extension is non-critical, so it's up to the client whether or not they want to process.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Henry.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you very well. Go ahead.
I don't see my slides. Are those loading in okay? I guess I have to share the request slides. Yeah, the only thing is I don't see my slide deck. Would you like me to do the slides with screen share? I did put a request on the data tracker.
Yeah, one sec. We're looking for them.
Okay, no problem.
We found them, so don't worry.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Sorry about that. We have them up now.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, yeah, so these are updates to the draft IETF LAMP CA security tag, which is a new CA tag. I should probably have included more review content, but moving right into things, I can. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of background, which probably should have been in the slide deck, but essentially the tag allows for domain owners, and this is a CA tag, so it's checked by certificate authorities at issuance time, and it allows for domain owners to request that a sort of more cryptographically secure mode of issuing certificates is used when signing certificates for their domain. The purpose of this is to prevent the certificate issuance process, particularly domain control validation, from being intercepted by man-in-the-middle adversaries, since many of the existing methods today use plain text. So this effort is largely based on the idea that these records could be protected with some type of secure DNS lookup. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but the sort of de facto standard for protecting a DNS record is DNSSEC. Thus, it's a nice piece of progress that the CA and browser forum recently voted to approve ballot SC 085, which requires CAs to validate DNSSEC for all DCV and CAA DNS lookups. This means that if a domain owner puts this tag into their domain and it has the critical bit set, then any CA that doesn't understand the tag will have to retrieve it securely over DNSSEC, validate DNSSEC, presuming it's DNSSEC signed. Essentially, it then fails closed, and that prevents issuance by any CA that doesn't understand the tag. So as a result, thanks to this upgrade by the CA browser forum, we kind of get this global downgrade prevention, even if only a small subset of CAs actually, adopt this tag. Next slide. So in terms of updates to the document themselves, we had gotten feedback that the security considerations should be, one, toned down, that there were some security considerations that were covering what was general CAA security, and that should not be repeated to avoid confusion. And then also that we mentioned the potential use of recursive to authoritative DOH or DOT in the document. And there was a mention that the security considerations should explicitly mention this and talk about how that has different security properties than DNSSEC. So we modified the security considerations along these lines. We also added a couple of additional examples of DNS records for putting in data. So we have some methods of validating domains to satisfy this tag. And by the way, to clarify, a CA's ability to satisfy the security tag is independent of, they may need to do something else in addition to also satisfy the CA browser form or whatever their own CFP is. But this is sort of what has to be done to show that the domain owner has some type of cryptographic identity relating themselves to the domain. So circling back, we had some methods in the tag like private key control and this known account specifier. Known account specifier is essentially an Acme account URI. Private key control is sort of, I think some have called it DANE for CAs. But we gave examples of these records ending in the persist suffix, which kind of lines up with the working draft in the DNSOP working group. It also lines up with something the CA browser form's doing, where they're considering a ballot to permit persistent domain control validation that also ends in -persist. So we gave some record examples. Next slide. No, let's see, I can, yeah. So yeah, I think the next steps are we'd like to get more working group feedback. We're looking at an implementation in OpenMPIC. OpenMPIC's an open source library that satisfies multi-perspective issuance corroboration for web PKI CAs. That's used by Sectigo and a couple other CAs. And so we're looking at a implementation in this. And then we also, Aaron Gable from Let's Encrypt is an author on this draft. So we're also looking into the Let's Encrypt implementation of this tag. So that's pretty much it for the tag since Bangkok. I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'm not seeing anyone come to queue, but I would like to say thank you for the good work.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, thank you, everyone. So feel free to comment on list.
Okay, we'll take it any further discussion to the mail list.
private key info content types should be maxed, but I don't see any slides.
There are no slides. Do you want to just say a word, Jeff? He's gonna flog you. We're waiting for you at the shepherd.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so I have no slides, but I think working group last call ended sometime last month, about a month ago, and no comments. So
Yes, we'll get to that. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Do you mind if I borrow your European adapter?
I only have the Mac.
Plug it out.
I only have the Mac.
I'll borrow the other one.
Okay, what's next?
I don't know because I just lost it. All right, I think we're on to the under consideration for adoption section. Oh, we're on, yeah, but I think that was the last one. No.
Yeah, we finished that too.
Yep.
Oh, because we skipped. Okay.
Yeah, we skipped composite. Yep.
Okay. Amazing. The next one is the draft Yusuf Lamps 7030 renewal recommendation. He doesn't want to talk.
Shy or something. You got slides, finding them.
Yeah, I have the slides and it should be coming up. My laptop is reconnecting.
Reconnecting.
Yes.
Does it need a hint?
It needs a hint. Yes.
Caffeine
'Cause I can
probably
sell
help more
them.
than hints.
I can sell them cheap for you. Over in the seller working group, which are many people that don't know the IETF, I keep trying to convince them that new draft numbers are okay because integers are plentiful.
Yes.
Yes. I'll grab that.
Can you?
Where is it?
You give the clicking control to the clicking bot.
No, I don't see it.
You don't see it, the clicking bot?
Do you know where it is? Can you show it?
If you know where it is on the.
It's one of the participants. Go to the participants.
Oh,
It's the
that's right.
top, and then you
Right.
give the control to the clicking
Clicking
bot. The clicking bot.
You're right.
It's not an LLM. The clicky bot is not an LLM.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So this is a kind of I don't know, not last minute, but close to last minute kind of discussion that we had. I don't know, beginning of June or something like that. So we've had this conversation in ACME. If it seems familiar, that's good. I'm happy to bore you. So you get a cert, you know when it'll expire, not after. You don't know when you're allowed to start renewing it. The typical thing is you should start renewing it at 50% lifetime. That's been the world for a long time. Over in ACME, they said we would like to have a mechanism that tells you different. Why? Well, there's a bunch of different reasons. One is that often, particularly in IoT, but in other things, it's very useful to have a dashboard that allows you to see, or a third party to see, when all the certs are ready to be renewed. And this actually was a big deal, and that's one of the arguments for in ACME for doing this. Then some devices might be air gapped or kind of semi-offline. In my vision, I imagine one of those oil horses out in the Saskatchewan north, which maybe has a LoRa or something like that to tell you whether it's alive or not, but you just don't want to do cert renewal over that. You want to do it when the service guy's truck is nearby with the LTE. So you might like to do that to coordinate things. And so basically you say, well, should we do it now or should we do it when the truck is next there? Anyway, as I said, ACME 9773 recently do this, and basically we want the same thing for EST. I'm going to stop here if anyone has any questions about why we want to do this. I don't think I have very many 4 slides or something like this. Any questions at this point? Why would we want to do this? No. Yeah, so it's basically it, right? So we have a draft. It doesn't say a lot. We really think that actually we want almost exactly what ACME has, including the fact that it's a JSON answer to the question. This would be a new EST resource. So there would be a new query, renewal information that you would ask. And we actually think that we want a JSON answer with essentially identical what you have in 9773. And that's really it. There's not really a lot more else to say about the story. Any questions?
So,
any objections?
I see someone going to the mic.
Yeah, so this is Deb Cooley, but I'm not wearing a hat right now. So I'm not your AD, right? So ARI is a way for the server to tell the client when it wants you to renew.
Correct.
Right. So it says, like, if it has a problem and it wants to renew everybody because it's like wants to do something special, it can tell you, renew now, please. Is that what you want for EST? Like EST doesn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
EST doesn't work that way, does it?
Well, the client has to visit the server and say, I would like to new certificate, either full CMC or simple enroll. And the client decides when to do that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So very much the same in ACME. The client decides when it's going to do that. You can have the problem of stampeding elephants if everyone decides to renew at the same time. So that's one of the arguments in ACME for why you want to do this. You want to stagger things not just at the 50% point, but in fact maybe over a wider thing. So some of the use cases that Rifat has is that he has customers that want to have extremely short certificate life spans. And so renewing at 50% actually would be a significant reduction in their thing. So they really want to renew at like 95% at the last moment, and they want to do it that way. So they want to push the time out in the future. So that's one use case. You want to push them to be longer, to wait longer. The other side is that you want to issue, and this is an example in IoT, you might want to, or any kind of airbag thing, you might want to issue a 10-year certificate. But what you actually say is, please renew in 1 year. So at any one time, you come back every year, you renew, everything's successful, you're all good. But should something bad happen, pandemic, earthquake, whatever, you are not going to be dealing with my system's all failed because the certificate's expired. You have a very long runway, but you would renew frequently, but you would give a very long thing. So waiting 50% is too long for that.
Yeah, I understand that part, right? That part's not, I mean,
And also,
I get that, right?
Also the other side is, come and visit me every year because I might have something else to tell you, like subordinate CAs are rolled, or I want to issue a new certificate with a different OID, or I want you to change a SHA-2 to Shake 256 or something, right, along the way.
I mean, that's not what ARI does, right? So ARI is
No.
just.
No, but because you come to visit again and they tell you when to come, you could have a new negotiation. That's part of the process. And you could do that in ARI. ARI doesn't say that you're going to do that, but it says just come back during this window, right?
So why aren't you just configuring your EST client to go more often or less often or whatever you want, right?
Oh, well, so you could do that. You could do that, but then
Without a change to the protocol, right?
right, but you could do that, but then you have product A configured this way, okay, and product B identical thing for a different customer who has a different policy. So
As you want, right?
as you want, but the point is that the devices are trying to maybe onboard, autonomically. So you don't want to go out and configure the clients, tune these things specifically. You want the CA to really say what's going on, and the CA actually could answer. Could say, hey, I want you to come back in a month. I want you to come back in a month. Oh, I like you. Come back in a year.
So architecturally, I don't understand why the CA should be dictating. Why does the CA know what your circumstance is? He just knows that when you come to him and say, hey, here's the CSR, fix it for me, he does it. He doesn't
Mike,
know
can
your
I?
situation. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is that Mike?
That's Mike Answorth. I'm also an author.
Where are you? How come our TV's off?
Hello.
It's dark.
It's
very early in that part of Ontario. It's still dark.
You like came out of the ceiling.
He's not over there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have to put a technical
All right.
thing in.
I'll
do that when
so
I'm back.
I want to talk about the dashboarding use case. So imagine I've got equipment on an ambulance and the IT guy needs to know whether he needs to walk out to the ambulance and bring that thing into the Wi-Fi to let it update itself. And I find the dashboarding use case is interesting because it's not the person holding the certificate who's trying to query it. It's some third party IT admin dashboard thing that's trying to say, all right, I've got this fleet of certs. Which ones are currently eligible for renewal? And ARI does that. ARI allows you to query by issuer and serial number. So if I know the issuer and serial number of all these million certs I manage, I can run a dashboard. To me, that's the really interesting use case here, is to allow third parties to query when stuff is available for renewal, which might allow the IT admin to go take some action, like put it on a network.
Sean?
Hi, Sean Turner. We did, to answer a little bit of Deb's question, why might the CA be in the knickers of the device? Because the central key manager might be the one telling the device to make the updates. That's why you might want to tell them to go do it, but that's another thing. So I did a document that did EST extensions a couple of years ago, and we had a thing called a product availability list. And one of the things in there was an indicator hey, come back and get a cert, or get rekey, those kind of things, give it an indication. So totally fine. Sounds completely reasonable to me. The details obviously got to be worked out. When I looked in the draft, it was we don't know yet. But I don't think it sounds like a crazy idea. But there is another thing that does some of the same stuff.
Did you publish this or it?
Oh no, it's an RFC.
It's an RFC? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's RFC. What number is that? 8295.
Right, we'll go read it. Maybe it already solves the problem.
It does do some different things, and you might not like the way it does it.
So I think one of the gap maybe that maybe Deb behind Deb's question is the CA in this case, is not let's encrypt or digicert. It's Food Corp's private PKI, right? And it's an enterprise CA, and it's about that thing. So the policy is, I think the policy is centrally managed by the enterprise, and not ideally we don't have to go touch all the variety of different devices to tell them the policy, or even if they can be manually configured for that. So Scott.
Okay, Scott Fleur, Cisco Systems. When a client does a renewal, try to do a recontact with EST, can this responses, one of these possible responses from the CA is, hey, you're good, you don't have to renew now, check back in the next month?
There's a retry message, but that's mostly about, I'm really busy now, can you try back in 60 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not really try back in six months.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that it couldn't say that, but I don't know that clients ought to respect such a long retry. That may be a problem. But more importantly, if that requires that the device go online, get enough bandwidth, form a CSR, which might involve, you know, turning on your HSM's battery or something if you're whatever. Like imagine you have a Voyager, you know, device type and you turn your devices on and off because you're conserving battery. Like that's, I can imagine that situation. But the point is you have to get all that ready, okay? And then only to be told, well, you wasted all your time, come back later. So it would be nicer if we could schedule it rather than, you know, error it.
The reason I'm asking is one of the use cases you mentioned was, well, in a month, it's possible that I might change my policy. So why don't you come back? If you do that, then if it occurs to me that that's not a good use case unless one of the possible answers is no, my policy has not changed.
Yes, that's a fair statement, and that may be a reasonable addition that this thing would need to say.
Okay, thank you.
And the other side is that you might also set your numbers lower as you go because you anticipate in the same way that you would do in DNS, right? You lower your TTLs because you know you're moving equipment next week. So you start lowering them from week-long things to day-long things. In this case, you know that you're going to replace your CA, you know, at the end of the year. So you really want everyone to at least come back within a year, right?
Okay, thank you.
Any major objections or misunderstandings? That's what I really want clarifications. Valerie?
Valerie Smyslow, Plus. I have a clarifying question. Can a device come earlier to the CA? Will it be rejected or it can completely ignore this recommendation?
That was Deb's question. Do we have an error code that says clearly you came too early, please go away now? And the answer is maybe, but maybe we should have a clearer error code that says that.
So the device still cannot completely ignore this because it can be just...
We could have ignorant devices that don't know this extension, didn't ask for it, do their 50% renewal, get a 202 retry, which they also might not know what to do with. And then, I don't know, just drop the connection and they'll come back in a week. I don't know. What to do with devices that don't know this, the policy. Maybe there's a good section on heuristic on what you should do for that case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Wait, Rich.
Oh, Rich, sorry.
Sorry. It seems to me that I think the use cases are real important and useful. I mean, we've got our own dashboards Rich solves Akamai, our own dashboards internally that tell us when certs have to be, but using ARI is like turning it on its side, right? ARI tells you come back. This doesn't tell you what the maintenance windows are. So all you know is, can I come now? Yes.
No, that's not the proposal. The proposal is to do exactly what ARI says. Here's the window to come back in. The side conversation is, what if they come back too soon? They ignore it. Should we have some additional telemetry?
But it also
as well?
doesn't say, here's the window to come back in. But what if I know it's a monthly truck run that's coming out? This doesn't give you any information about that. If my cert is good for 6 months, and knowing that the truck comes in 1 month or in 4 months, that it doesn't address that one at all. It seems like it doesn't address do I have to renew this cert now? No, it's can I renew this cert now?
Right, the truck is here. The window says I can renew it, so I will renew it.
But, okay.
Okay.
So you're not.
But the previous 3 truck visits were before the window opened, so I didn't renew it. Right?
Yeah, all right. I put it in the chat, a more terse description of what I think the issue is, but okay, fine.
Okay. I don't know if the Alberta oil truck thing is realistic, but that's in my mind what kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just going to ask this, John Gray from Entrust. So what if that window of renewal, say you only come in every 6 months or whatever, because you're a very limited connected device, and now you're told that you can't renew, but it's going to be then your certificate. It's the next time you come in, like it'll be past, like you're going to expire. Like
so I think in that case, you misconfigured your lifetimes.
Okay.
Okay. I think the answer was you should have not had a, whatever it was, 1 year renewal, run your maximum lifetime if you can only renew every 6 months. Okay, and you were off by, I don't know, 3 days early for the halfway point. Probably you should have had a 13 or 14 month cert lifetime rather than, and you know, then then you get 2 6-month intervals within that renewal period, if it's 50%, let's say.
Okay.
Right. And that's why, like, you look at the new announced cab forum numbers, you know, it's a 90-day certificate, but its validity is 100 days because we assume there's 10 days. They assume there's 10 days of, you know, error, right? Grace, long weekends, power failures, who knows what, right? So, and you look at all those numbers, the 1 year is really whatever, you know, 380 days or something.
You might be setting yourself. So if the client, I don't know, something changes on them after, where, like, you know, things change or whatever, the server doesn't know the client's schedule, then suddenly, you know, something might change there. Maybe you're setting yourself up for problems like in the future. That's all I'm saying.
So today you would start trying at 50%, right? And what we're saying is that may be too late for some things, and it may be way too early for other things, and you would wind up rotating your certificates at twice the speed you intended, right, for that. Refax, you know, has a customer that wants a 4-day certificates. I think he's pushing back to find out whether that's real and whether the customer would actually like to articulate their real needs. What are they really concerned about? But I think that's where part of this started, was like, oh, 4-day. Well, we better be renewing certs in the last 6 hours, because otherwise, really, it's a 2-day certificate, and that may be too soon for long weekends or who knows what, right?
Okay, thank you. We've run 1 minute over. Thank you. So thank you for the attention. And when we return to the second LAMP session, we will start with the composite discussion, and then we'll move to the under consideration for adoption remaining presentations. Thank you. Wow. That's stressful.